I wanted to start out by telling a story. Rick tells this story, and I tell it sometimes too. So I know many of you have heard it, but I just think it sets the stage for this conversation that I was asked to have about the four big questions. But it's about a man who is down on his luck. He goes into a cafe, orders a cup of coffee, and sits down by a window. And as he's sitting there, he noticed there's this fly, and the fly just keeps buzzing against the window. It's just buzzing and buzzing and buzzing, and as hard as the fly tries to get through the window, he just can't get through the window. And the guy's thinking, man, my wife's left me, my kids have no respect for me, they barely tolerate me, I hate my job. And I just keep trying. I'm trying so hard. And then he notices the fly at some point gives up and just lays down in the windowsill and dies. And he's actually identifying with this fly to the place that he starts to tear up. And as he looks down, he sees he spilt a little bit of sugar and just a drop of cream on the table, and he notices there's another fly. And this one seems to be nibbling on the sugar and then going over and getting a little bit of cream. And after doing that a couple times, it flies over to the door, lands on the door frame, and just waits for the next customer to come in and flies out. And he's just going, why? Why? Why can't I be more like that fly instead of, just never somehow, no matter how hard I try, having it actually seem to work out. And I just have to tell you that for me, I can just so identify with that man. I got married when I was 18 years old. We had our first child when we were 19. We had 4 more kids right away. And then I started working here at Catholic Community Services. I'd been volunteering for a couple of years before that, but they finally hired me, and I got to work in one of our group homes. And I just had found my niche, I loved the work. I was working really long hours, and my wife kept telling me that I loved the kids at work more than I loved my own family. And I kept going, that's not, you don't understand, we've got a mission there. I'm called to this work. I'm so sure that I'm called to this work. And to make a long story short, she and I, we worked so hard to make our marriage work. But after 23 years, she left me and filed for a divorce. We were both Catholics. I didn't think she could do that. It was like, wait a minute, you're not playing by the rules. You said till death do us part. And what I realized was the marriage was dead. Later I realized that. It was dead. We had done all that we could, but like that guy that's watching the fly that can't get through the window, and then no matter how hard we try, it was a bankrupt strategy, the things that we were doing. So it's about that same time that we are doing an update of our strategic plan, and we invited a whole lot of the people that we serve. And it was great. 60 people showed up, people that we serve. And we hired a facilitator, and we had a day-long retreat. And at the end of the retreat, the feedback that we're getting from the folks is, well, if we weren't in your programs, we'd be in an institution. And we don't want to be in the institution, and being here is better than that, but really we don't like your program either. Well, why? Why can't we have our own home? Why do we have to be in a program? Why can't, you're spending so much money paying people to take care of us. if you spend a fraction of that, we could be in our own homes. We don't want to live in a program. And I busted my ass for this. I'd lost a marriage over this. And I just went, what's this all about? You know, are we doing any good at all? And I kind of lost it for a little while. I lost, you know, not in the sense that I did anything stupid. I came close, but I just sort of lost my heart, you know. And I asked the board for a month off. And I'd been seeing the spiritual director up at the Trappist Abbey in Lafayette, Oregon. And they had a thing they called a monastic life retreat. And so I signed up to go just live with the monks for 30 days. And I just made a commitment to myself for those 30 days. You know, I'd seen Karate Kid, you know, where it's wax on, wax off, whatever they tell you to do. Don't argue, just I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. And it was so goofy because I got to tell you, this is a but I remember in grade school, I had a music teacher who just asked me if I would mouth the words because I was throwing all the other kids off with my, you know, I just can't carry a tune. So my spiritual director says, you know, we come together and we sing these hymns and we pray 7 times a day. And this is praise, it's not performance, and so we just want you to sing. And I went, oh no. You know, because the only place I sing is in the shower with the door closed. And so, but I had said, I'm going to do whatever he asks me to do. So I'm just belting out these psalms, and a couple days goes by and he comes up and says, Jim, could you just lower it down a little bit because you're throwing all the monks off. And I just went, oh man, I turned red, you know, and I just thought, yes, I will do whatever you say. Yes. Anyway, while I was there and I kept talking to him about what had happened, my marriage, the work, all of this stuff. And he said something to me one day that I never will forget. He said, Jim, I'm going to tell you something. I believe, I don't know one monk, including me, that came to the monastery for the right reasons. And he said, you know what? Doesn't matter. All that matters is why we stay. So you have to decide. Have you got a good reason to go back to Catholic Community Services? Marriage is over. But you have to decide, do you have a good reason to stay there? And he started asking me to reflect on what we call the 4 big questions. And there's sort of 2 parts to these questions. He says, you know, each of us are a singularity. But really, we don't exist as a singularity. If there were really only me, that's impossible. There had to be my mom and my dad for there to be me, you see. So it's true that I exist as a singularity, but it's only true that I can exist as a singularity inside a family and inside a community. Because without others, I wouldn't exist either. Does that make sense? So he said, we ask these questions in 2 contexts. As you, but even more importantly, as a family, as a community. And so the first big question was, who are we? Who am I? Well, you know, I'd seen these things before where you go through and you think, well, if I lost my arms, would I be me? If I lost my legs, would I be me? You know, what has to go? What is it that's me here? It was, for me back then, this was in 1992, I hadn't really thought about it. Who am I? But he said, just as importantly, who are we? Maybe more importantly, who are we? Because me outside of we just doesn't work. And they said the second big question is, what do you value, or what do you cherish most, or what do you need most? What's the most important thing to you in life? And then what is the most important thing to us? And so the question has become, what do we cherish most? What's the most important thing in your life? I hadn't sorted it out, you see. I didn't really know who I was, and I didn't really know what I cherished most. I know what made me feel good. I loved the attaboys. I know what made me feel bad whenever my wife would say we have to talk. So I just going towards what felt good and avoiding what felt bad. That was sort of how I was living my life. And I was losing what was most precious to me in the process. Does that make sense? So then the third big question, he said, is, well, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do to show up in the world as the person you long to be, not the person you are afraid you might be? What are you going to do to show up in the world? And this is the most important question. Excuse me. There's a quote in the Bible that just says, "What good is it if I inherit the whole world and lose my soul? If I don't know who I am, if I give up who I am fundamentally as a human being, in order to have what I want, in order to have what I cherish most, I've got the booby prize. Even if I get what I want and I lose my soul, I've got the booby prize." But you don't have to. We can be who we long to be, and we can have what we cherish most as long as we keep it ordered in that order. Reverse the order, and you see people who I used to think I wanted a Corvette. I said, I would be happy if I had a Corvette. I said, well, why do you want a Corvette? Well, really, I just want the girl. Okay, so you get the girl. Well, I got the girl, and I'm still miserable. She hates me. And well, she didn't hate me, but she just doesn't want to be with me anymore. So what is all of that? You can get all the stuff you want, all the things you want, and if you aren't showing up in the world as who you long to be, there's still a sense of despair. So what do you have to do to be, first of all, who you long to be, and then to have what's the most important things in your life, to have what you cherish most? And again, it's still about us. It's not just about me. How do we do that as a community? And then finally, and this was in some ways the most difficult piece, it's like the guy sitting there watching the fly, and he's seeing the other one, and he's going, I don't know how to do it. I'm working as hard as I know how to work, and it's not working. So the fourth big question is, what do I need to learn? Where do I need to grow? Where do I need to heal? In order to do what I know I have to do. Most of us really do know what we have to do. It isn't that. I mean, how many times I took time off and went on vacation with my wife. And so we get on vacation, and we get down there, and we're going to go see things that she wants to see. We haven't made arrangements for transportation. So I say, I want to take a cab. I don't want to drive in this city traffic. She says, no, I grew up down here. I know it all. I want to drive. I want to rent a car. And I'm thinking, I don't like riding with you. I don't like being with you. You drive too fast. It scares me. I want a cab. Well, I want a car. Well, I want a cab. I want a car. Spent the money, took off the time, went down there, got pissed. She went and saw things in a car. I went and saw things in a cab. And what I was telling myself is I am not going to let her push me around. And what she was telling herself was, I am not going to let him dominate me. It's just the way men are. And I was dying inside and she's dying inside. We're like that guy, buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. I just wanted to die. I was so miserable. I knew I was blowing it, but I didn't know what to do about it. That's why sanctuary, I think, is just so important. If I would have had sanctuary back then, and if I just would have had a safety plan, and if I would have understood it better. So then each of us has this responsibility, I think, if we're going to work here, especially in work, where people are basically coming to us in one way or another, needing support to be the person they want to be and to enjoy life the way they want to enjoy it. And so I think we do have this responsibility to be asking ourselves these questions on an individual basis. And then the words that we use here are just then leaning into it. I'm 68 years old now, and that was 1992 back then. It's 2018. We've been leaning into it ever since, and I still have so far to go. I mean, I still get into power struggles with my wife, but they don't ruin more. I can just tell you, they just don't ruin much time. That ruined a whole vacation. Today, they ruin usually at the most a half an hour. Swear to you, half an hour is about all I spend anymore knowing I'm not showing up as a loving husband. And one of the things I want is just to enjoy this intimate, connected relationship with my wife. And I screw it up, but I know how to do repair. I know how to stop it. I know how to do my safety plan. I don't come at it so tired anymore. My self-care plan. So I want to just share with you, you've got this responsibility to do your own reflection for you as a singularity. But we've got answers to these questions as a community. We've got questions and answers. So who are we as a Catholic community? Services, employees, workforce, volunteers. And what we say when you're on the clock, what we want you to say, what we hope you will say, is that we are loving people. That's it. That's who we are. We are loving people. Now, not everybody's going to wish you well. You're still a loving person. You're a loving person everywhere, every time, with everybody. Somebody treats you like crap. Boy, it's so strong. That adage, hurt people. Somebody treats me like crap. Now, I got to tell you, if my wife, sometimes if she just doesn't smile at me, I'll lose it. It's like, so I'm not saying I do this all the time, but my commitment is to show up no matter what my wife does, no matter what the staffer does that's coming into my office to tell me what's going wrong, that I'm there as a loving person. And so I have active goodwill towards that person. It doesn't mean you don't set and protect boundaries. In fact, it does mean you set and protect healthy boundaries. So then we say, well, what do we cherish most? At the top of the list is peace and happiness. This gets back to Josh's story about being in the airplane. If I don't show up having enjoyed a full measure of peace and happiness, a lot of you have heard me tell the story about the young man. I was just reading him the riot act. Again, this was just a few years before the divorce. And he turned to me and he said, what do you want from me? Do you want me to be like you? Why would I want to be like you? You aren't happy. I went, how did he know? I tried to act happy. I went out and shot baskets. I did stuff. Somehow he knew. I just wasn't happy. I think about when I'm going to tell this story at the luncheon, but I'll just share it with you. My little granddaughter, 2 years old, she gets the flu and it gets really bad. You know, with little kids, it can be fatal. Well, somehow, I'd never heard of this, her big intestine spasmed and pulled her small intestine into the big one, and then it clamped down on it, and it had created a situation where there was gangrene developing, and we didn't know it. The doctors didn't know it. And when they finally discovered it at Salem Hospital, they said, we can't do the surgery here. She needs emergency surgery, but we can't do it here. She needs something you can't do? Yes, we've got to transport her to Portland right away. So we went up to Oregon Health Sciences University, and you know, we're putting this little 2-year-old girl in this doctor's hands who we don't know. And you know, he goes in and he does the surgery, and he comes out, and he tells us she's going to be okay. That she's going to be at the luncheon. If you come to the luncheon, you'll get to meet my granddaughter, Phoenix. I just want to tell you, you know, I wanted to put her in the hands of a surgeon who was taking care of himself. I didn't want him to be using drugs. I didn't want him to be doing 16 hours of surgeries to have a fat wallet. I wanted him the day before, I wanted him playing golf with his buddies and going home and making love to his wife and coming into work saying, I'm here to save the world today. And I've got your granddaughter and she's in good hands. That's who I wanted to put my granddaughter into those hands. And every time the Lord puts somebody into our hands here, that's the kind of person he wants to put them into the hands of here. Whenever a parent puts their child in our hands, or whenever a person calls us and says, I really don't want to put myself in your hands. I want to be able to take care of myself, but I can't, and I have to put you in my hands, and I resent it, and I resent you. Doesn't matter. We still need to be there to the best of our ability, having enjoyed as much peace and happiness, being available as we can. So we have to look at that. The second, in terms of what we say at work we cherish most, it's safe, stable, nurturing relationships or loving relationships. That we not only want to be a loving person, we want to enjoy loving relationships. We say safe, stable, nurturing relationships are the key malleable social determinant of everybody's life prospects. If there's just one thing we do at Catholic Community Services, it's encourage people to have great relationships with family members, friends, and neighbors. That should be the central thing. Because people who have great relationships with family members, friends, and neighbors are starting to show up as loving people. You can't have great relationships if you're not, you got to give and take. And so they're going to start showing up as loving people. And what we find is once people start showing up as loving people, it comes back, you get what you receive, and their relationships improve. It's just a little nudge to improve your health. And that's another one of the things that we say. We enjoy good health. My own affirmation is that we enjoy good health, strength, fitness, and being well rested. That's my affirmation around that. The agency says what we do is help people to enjoy good health. And then the third thing we say is that we cherish and value knowledge, skills, and virtues. And really, it's knowledge, skills, and virtues that give us efficacy, that allow us to actually do those things that we need to do in order to show up as who we want to be and to have what we want to have. And then finally, we say we want to enjoy a simple financial prosperity. Sometimes the board says financial self-sufficiency, but I don't like those words. But if you read the documents, it'll say self-sufficiency, but it's really that idea of a simple financial prosperity. So those are the things we say we cherish most, those 5 things. Peace and happiness, a full measure of peace and happiness, safe, stable, nurturing relationships, good health, knowledge, skills, and virtues development, and a simple financial prosperity. And then what do you do? Well, what we say here we do, there's a whole lot. I mean, you're day to day, you've got to figure that out yourself. But there's this basic set of 3 sorts of skills that we ask you all to have that's sort of at the heart of it. And one is mindfulness. You have to, whether you like meditation or don't like meditation, that doesn't matter. But we are in stressful situations and we have to be able to be mindful. It just means being able to be calm and to be able to see what your goal is and not losing sight of your goal. Something about the common good here. And being able to be calm enough in any situation that wisdom can occur. That I see not only what my goal is, I see the best path to that goal, and I'm going to act in this wise, prudent sort of way. That's all mindfulness is to me. And I think for what I have found is when I practice mindfulness meditation every day, and I'm committed to it, then when I get into those stressful situations, I had a football coach that says, you're going to do in the game whatever you practice in practice. And it seems like that's true. If I'm there practicing mindful meditation day in and day out, and then these situations show up that push my buttons, I'm getting better and better at not having it push my buttons. So we want people to be mindful. We want people to be able to practice what we call honest, compassionate communication. It's almost virtually the same thing as nonviolent communication. We have a little bit of a twist to it, but there's books on nonviolent communication. And then we want you to be able to have the knowledge and the skills to practice sanctuary masterfully. To practice sanctuary knowledge and skills masterfully. Because I can tell you that, at least for me, when I look back on my own relationship, there wasn't any lack of desire to be a good husband. There wasn't any lack of knowing what I needed to do. It's just we would get into these situations that would trigger old past trauma. What Rick has taught me is instead of the brain architecture being able to stay engaged in that executive function, that what happened was when I got reminded of this old trauma is that my brain architecture just would reroute everything right through my amygdala, and I was in fight, flight, or freeze without even being aware of what was going on. And so it wasn't, are we going to be in a cab or are we going to drive? It was just reminding me of times when I was in relationships with people where I felt helpless and it just hurt, and it made me mad to feel helpless. And there I was again, fight, flight, or freeze. And I couldn't get out of it. I didn't know how to get out of it. Sanctuary teaches us how to keep getting better. There's, how to just continually be a little bit better at actually being able to do the things that we want to do to show up in the world the way we want to show up, and to enjoy the things that we cherish most in life.